You have a quorum. It is 8:30. Some of us have a meeting at 10, I think. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee of the Board of Commissioners of Kent County. We are suspending the normal rules with respect to how we hold these meetings and have a description of how we intend to proceed in a virtual meeting context. And I'll ask our Administrator, Wayman Britt, to go ahead and read the terms of this alternative process.
Good morning. Pursuant to Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-48, the Legislative Committee of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, in order to protect the public health, will conduct this meeting via electronic communication. Any member of the public wishing to listen to the proceedings or provide public comment may do so by using the internet connection or phone numbers and passcode as listed on the agenda. You may also call public comment at kentcountymi.gov, or you can reach out via email. Any disrupting the meeting by using offensive language or any offensive action will cause your removal. You will be also silenced in the call. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Wayman. Let's move into the agenda items. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Well, the public didn't give a lot of time here to simulate all that. They have seen it on the announcement. But anyway, if anyone is online that wishes to participate and make a comment or address the committee, you may do so. Certainly identify yourself, make sure that you're off mute, and you have up to 3 minutes to comment to the committee.
Seeing none.
We'll give it just a little extra time because of the unusual manner in which we're doing this. All right, I take it there was no identified comment.
There was none.
All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes for April 28, 2020. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I would move
So
approval.
moved.
This is Jim.
I think Commissioner Talon moved approval. There was a second from
By Melton, Commissioner Melton.
by Commissioner Melton. Thank you. Any discussion with respect to the minutes? If not, does this require a roll call since we're doing this by virtual?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Hennessy,
Yes.
Coleman. Commissioner Coleman.
Commissioner Coleman sent me a note indicating he would not be able to be here today, so.
Okay. Commissioner Melton.
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Teal.
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Talon.
Yes.
Commissioner Vonk.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
All right, good, thank you. Let's move to the next item, which is item 3. The Public Affairs Associate, Becky Beckler, is online, and if I circulate, there you are. So the microphone is yours, Becky.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope everyone was able to enjoy a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. And now we're back at it. Michigan has been under a stay-at-home order since March 24th, just a mere 62 days. And not that anybody's keeping track, but the governor over the weekend did further extend that stay safe order, as she now is referring to it, to June 12th, and then the state of emergency until June 19th. However, the governor is beginning to open up parts of the state's economy. Just before the weekend, she did open the bars and restaurants in the Upper Peninsula and the northern part of Michigan at 50% capacity. She's also allowing retail to open by appointment beginning today statewide. We're also allowed to have gatherings of 10 or less statewide. And she also lifted the requirement that healthcare providers delay non-essential medical, dental, and veterinary procedures, so those can begin scheduling their appointments. And in Lansing, legislators are slowly starting to get back to a very limited legislative session. For the House, they come in on Wednesday for session for votes. There are committee meetings held on Tuesday and Wednesday. And in the Senate, they're meeting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in formal session, but they usually have committees on Tuesday and Wednesday. Committees, there's about 4 on each side that are beginning to meet. They're being very careful. Most of the testimony is given virtual via Zoom. As they consider legislation that needs to get done. There's certainly nothing more important than the state of our economy and the state of the state budget. Last Friday on May 15th, the Revenue Estimating Conference did meet, and as we predicted, their predictions were grim. In total, it was a $6.2 billion deficit for the current year budget as well as the upcoming 2020-2021 fiscal year, which begins October 1. For the current year, the general fund deficit was $2 billion, and the school aid fund deficit is $1.2 billion. Most of that deficit can be tracked back to the declining income tax and sales tax. For the 2021 budget year that begins October 1, they agreed that the general fund would have a $1.9 billion deficit, and the school aid budget would be $1.1 billion deficit. Now, there is $700 million that the governor vetoed back in March. If you recall, the legislature had a supplemental that they were moving through just before the coronavirus hit. And so the governor did veto $700 million, so that is available on the book. So that brings the current year deficit down to $2.5 billion, which is still astronomical given the fact that we're 7 months into this budget year. And about 80% of our budget goes to third-party individuals, schools, hospitals, healthcare, counties. So it's very difficult when you've already, I guess, budgeted and started to give all that money away. We also have a $1.1 billion rainy day fund. However, there are limits on that use as well. Last year, 2 years ago, before the Governor Snyder left office, he did sign legislation that limited how much money could be taken out each fiscal year. And so if they wanted to use that money this year, they're limited to about $285 million, unless the legislature changed those parameters, which it doesn't sound like they are interested in doing. So now that the Revenue Estimating Conference is met, there are timeframes that begin. The budget director must send a letter to the governor indicating that the state budget is in deficit. And then the governor, once she receives that letter, has 10 days to issue an executive order to the legislature. She also is required to give them 5 days notice. To our knowledge, the treasurer and the budget director have not sent that letter to the governor. And as we understand it, they don't actually have a time frame in which they need to do that. I believe what is happening is that they are trying to wait as long as possible. The administration is working very hard with members of Congress in hopes that they pass the stalled HEROES Act that the House of Representatives in DC passed, because that has money for states and local governments, and they desperately want to use that to fill some of these budget holes. However, they're coming under some timelines in which to do that. They also, for the school aid budget, there is a 30-day time frame that if the legislature and the governor's office do not act within 30 days, there's an automatic 650 per pupil proration reduction cut at the end of those 30 days. So we have a little bit of time, but it has to stay within that 30-day time frame, or that automatic kick-in does affect the school aid budget. The state also has received $3.9 billion from the last CARES Act. 800,000 of that goes directly to local governments that have directly been impacted by the COVID, which would mean Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Kent would divide that money. That leaves $3.1 billion for the state. However, that can only be used for relief dollars for new COVID response purposes. It can't be used to backfill the budget, and it can't be used to fill any current line item in the budget. So it's strictly used for COVID issues. That's why they're sitting on that, is they're hoping that either the HEROES Act will pass from Congress, or Congress will agree to some boilerplate language, if you will, that would give them flexibility on that $3 billion. Offering some wrinkle into that is late last week, before the legislature left, the Senate did move a $500 million supplemental. And what they were trying to do is the fact that we've got $3 billion sitting there to be used for COVID. They wanted to say on how that money is going to be used, because if they didn't pass the supplemental, then the administration is free to spend that money however they deem appropriate. So the legislature, wanting some say in how that money is spent, started to work on a $530 million supplemental that's strictly for COVID money. So the governor's office was involved in some of those conversations. However, the House was not involved in those conversations when the Senate passed that. So there is still more work to be done, and because they're going to want to say on how that money is spent. Right now, here's how the money is dedicated. There's about $178 million for a $3 increase for direct care workers. There's $150 million for the Department of Education. $125 million of that is for child care reductions that occurred in April, May, and June. There's $10 million for baseline benchmark assessment when students come back to school, and $15 million for statewide summer school for credit recovery. $172 million for Treasury, and $100 million for first responder bonuses. $50 million for PPE, and $11 million for an additional 300 workers to be hired for unemployment claims processing. So the House is currently reviewing this. We believe that they could act on it as soon as this week. They will make changes. They just don't know what they plan to add or changes to that. So we will have to stay close as far as that is concerned. We've also begun meeting the Kent County leadership with our delegation, expressing our concern and asking them not to cut, especially our revenue sharing for counties. We've had our first meeting with Senator Brinks and Representative Rachel Hood. We have a meeting, excuse me, today with Representative LeGrand, and then later this week with Senator McGregor and Representative Huizinga. And we anticipate more of the meetings will be held to express our concern about revenue sharing and some of the other budget priorities that Kent County has. And we want to continue to dialogue with them. So we will keep you updated on that. But I just wanted to let you know that those conversations are occurring last week and this week and will continue. In other committee activity, the House Judiciary is considering Senate Bill 899, which gives liability protections to direct care workers, hospitals, and nursing homes. It's had a couple of hearings. It closely resembles the executive order, but the legislature wanted to put it into committee activity. It's having a little trouble in the House of Representatives, but the Speaker of the House remains committed to it. He plans another hearing this week, but so far there's been no committee action on that piece of legislation. Over in the Senate, the Oversight Committee is probably the most active in the last couple of weeks. They've had 2 hearings dealing with an executive order that the governor, actually 2 executive orders that the governor has now done dealing with nursing homes. Our nursing homes have received a lot of attention over the last several weeks, and some of the legislators are very concerned about language in that executive order that requires nursing homes to readmit patients that have been deemed COVID response. And so that obviously will continue to have hearings as well this week on Wednesday. There's also a piece of legislation extending the trial court funding. The Cunningham decision, if you remember, has been something that has continued to come up in the legislature. They were scheduled to address this as far as money, because it could cost, I think, upwards of $100 million. However, given the situation, legislation passed the House last week, simply extending the sunset up to 2022. So those are some of the specific items that have occurred in the legislature. Again, we do not know when the executive order is likely to come before the legislature. We believe that the governor is waiting as long as possible. In a quick conversation with the Speaker's office this morning, they had not been notified yet, and it doesn't sound like there's any conversation between the 2 parties as well, or 3, if you will. If you recall, back in, I think, 2005, we were in a similar deficit, not quite as dire, and Governor Granholm had to issue an executive order. The trick with an executive order is the appropriations committees can just adopt it or reject it. You can't make changes to it. And Governor Granholm did not work with the legislature, and it was rejected. So time continued to move down the road with no agreement. There is a concern that if the Governor Whitmer is not working with the legislature, they may reject it and just further complicate the resolution to this budget, because once we get this done, we've got to then focus on the 2021 budget year. So it's all budget related as far as the concerns on the leaders. They continue to have some small, short hearings only on issues that they deemed necessary before the end of the year, but it's a pretty slim down version session as of right now. So that is my report. I would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
All right, thank you, Becky, for that report, as challenging as it is. So are there questions from any of the committee members? And I'm not sure I have the capacity to know if you are raising your hand, but you'll let me know, Wayman, if someone raises their.
Commissioner Melton has her hand up.
All right, Commissioner Melton.
Thank you, Wayman. Thank you, Chair. Becky, thanks. Thank you for that report. Two quick questions. The first one is the numbers that you quoted. I tried to write some of them down, but there were a lot of dollar amounts that were being appropriated. I think you mentioned several different places. There's this much money for school aid, this much money. Is that going to be in that report that we've been getting from as a full board, or can we get those numbers?
Absolutely. Yes, I believe it was sent out Friday evening or perhaps Monday. It would have come from the Kent County leadership.
Okay.
If you can't pull those up, please let me know and I can send that out again.
Okay. I took the day off from
Good for you.
Stuff yesterday. So, and to piggyback on that, I know going forward, an area that is always near and dear to my heart, of course, is our public schools. And let's face it, their next step is going to be a challenge at best. When you talked about the dollars and all of this, do you get a sense when you are there, when you're listening, when you're talking to our leaders, are they truly, I don't want to say appreciating, because I think there's so much on everyone's mind, but the challenge, just the vast amount of work that is going to have to go into moving forward in a public education setting. And I'm thinking, you know, our K through 5, I think our high schoolers can deal with it better just because they can grasp the situation better. But our younger learners are going to really have to, that's going to be something.
Absolutely. There is no one that I have talked to in the legislature that is interested in cutting the school aid budget.
Okay, good.
They understand that it may be out of their hands, but they are trying to be as creative as possible. If you recall, when the legislature was considering alternatives to the governor's proposal on a gas tax, the Senate and House Republicans offered an idea changing the teachers' retirement system. It's something that the governor's office rejected at the time. However, I would assume that the Republicans bring that issue back to the table because it could offer some significant savings for the state, and that would allow them to backfill the school aid budget. But I can assure you that the Speaker of the House and the Senate majority, as well as the governor, are doing everything they can to keep intact the school aid budget.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure they are. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes for anything. Thanks, Becky.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner with a question or comments? I don't see any others. I do have one follow-up for you, Becky. So the $3.8 billion that the state has available to it is under the CARES Act. I think it's the same CARES Act that delegated the $114 million to Kent County. Am I right that that is subject to the same spending restrictions, that is, it has to be allocated, spent before December?
I believe that is correct.
So they can't just wait indefinitely. This has to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think they're waiting. I don't think the waiting game will last that long, simply because the trigger for the school aid fund is 30 days. So they only have a few days left. And compounding that, the legislature, if we recall, passed self-imposed regulation that the budget for the upcoming October 1 be done by July 1st. they're second guessing their thought on that as well, because they want to wait as long as possible. Also, as a result of the last revenue estimating conference, they agreed that they're going to come back and do a third revenue conference in late August or early September, because at that time, the income tax filings will have come in. If you recall, there was delayed, our tax were delayed till July 15th. Those will be in. And then they feel like they'll have a better idea of where the finances clearly are for the state. So there is some good reason of which to wait in this circumstance, and the fact for hopes for additional money.
Well, we will all wait, I guess, along to see. I don't know if there's any way that we can avoid this not shaking us to our foundations. So we will go forward. All right, no other questions? If not, thank you, Becky, for your report.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 4, Administrator Office Performance Measurement Review.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to present the Administrator's Office's performance measures and significant accomplishments. 2019 was truly an ambitious and busy year, as you know, and it appears that 2020 is very similar. It's taking off with a new set of challenges and opportunities, especially with COVID-19. That's impacting all of us. This presentation will demonstrate our alignment with the new board priorities and goals under the new strategic plan and the results that we've achieved in 2019. As you may recall, the county strategic plan priorities are a set of 5 major accomplishments that the administration seeks to fulfill in pursuit of its mission. In 2019, the Board of Commissioners, along with input from our department directors, elected officials, employees, and community members, developed the following 5 priority areas. Economic prosperity. This will focus on sound fiscal management and policy to support the economic prosperity of the county as well as the West Michigan region. Number 2, high quality of life, which will foster a high quality of life that promotes safe and healthy communities, strategic growth, and world-class outdoor resources. Number 3, excellence in service delivery. We will adopt innovative ways to deliver services that maximize efficiency and provide an exceptional experience to those we serve. Inclusive participation, number 4. We will provide innovative and inclusive ways to engage residents and involve them in county government. And then number 5, effective communications, which we will be transparent and clear in the communications and decisions of the county. Now, each priority also includes a set of goals that are developed as part of the strategic planning process. These goals serve as the pathway to fulfill the county priorities. Additionally, the Administrator's Office developed a set of strategic goals to serve as the pathway to guide the work that we do. And I will go through those now. So as you see on the screen, the idea is to push for continuous improvement. Performance isn't just about doing the job, but it's about doing it better. Each of our goals guides us to do that. Under Embrace Innovation, we push to continually seek new and efficient technological opportunities to improve the delivery of county services. I can tell you that that one has been a real priority for me over the last couple of years, and we'll talk about that in a little while, but we've created quite a team here in the Administrator's Office in support of, with support of our IT department and our equalization department. Establish shared consciousness, create a unified team. As a team, we look out for the best of the whole organization, our elected officials, all of our departments, our community partners, and our common goals are guided by the strategic plan. Raise the county's profile. This goal is about telling our story, sharing our successes, and increasing collaboration and partnerships within the county. And a number of activities have occurred this past year to demonstrate that, and we'll talk about how we will continue to do that in 2020. strengthen data and data analytics. This will allow us to address important local issues by exploring and analyzing relevant open data, as well as by capitalizing on the in-house data that we store throughout the organization. We have a wealth of information that needs to be mined, utilized, and leveraged to improve the county and the quality of life in the county. Enrich internal communications. This will allow us to share information as a unified team to increase transparency to our employees, build upon the shared consciousness of our entire organization, model a better engagement of our workforce. And this effort speaks directly to the last goal, which is value talent, valuing people. Truly an important aspect of my career, working vigorously to think outside of the box in ways that will capitalize on the talent and the potential of individuals that make up Kent County. We need to leverage our resources. We need to increase our effectiveness, and you can't do that without employees who are aligned, motivated with the organization. We're going to get into the metrics, which will demonstrate some of the great work that staff are engaged in. We'll start with economic prosperity. Again, the goal is to position the county for multi-generation economic and population growth. The objective here is the annual budget recommendation, adhering to that 100% as established by the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee. We had last year, as you remember, work sessions, 3, I believe, plus we had a boot camp with our commissioners. And then, of course, we adhered to the annual budget parameters and came in with a balanced budget. Under same strategy, the next objective is to maintain a minimum credit rating of AAA by the various credit rating agencies. And again, we're proud that we maintain a consecutive string of 20 years of consecutive years of AAA bond rating with Standards and Moody's rating agencies. We'll move to the next slide, which is effective communications. And our goal was to be transparent and clear in our communications and the decisions of the county. And we have a number of initiatives that we've engaged to do that. And you will see that we are on track for each of these items. We wanted to develop a new strategic communication plan for the county and identify language ambassadors for emergency communications, engage in a branding campaign for the county, and redo the website. That is currently underway. We have been very blessed to have a new person in the role of communications assistant to Lori Latham. And with the COVID-19, I can tell you that we've really pushed to do the web design on the fly, and a lot of great work that's happened there. We also want to ensure visible county leadership and staff participation in community initiatives. And central to that, of course, we are continuing to identify opportunities to interact with the community, working with Lori Latham, Darius Quinn, others, to identify opportunities for us to be involved with community events and so forth. And of course, we are continuing to interact even in a greater way with our local units of government, making sure that we meet on a regular basis. In fact, this past month and a half, we've continued our Friday meetings with our local units of government, making sure that they understood where we were. Looks like Commissioner Vonk has a question.
Commissioner Bonk? I'm not hearing it if he does.
Okay.
Maybe we can pick it up at the end.
Continue. I went offline.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
ahead.
you. Commissioner Talon has a question.
All right, Commissioner Talon.
Thank you. I thought since you were taking questions, I'd ask this one instead of waiting till the end. Trying to understand in the display what on track means, because in the effective communications area here, and I don't know if we'll see this also later on, but for example, develop a new strategy for communication, there's 0 progress and it's on track. Or the next one is 5% progress and it's considered on track. Wondering how you decide whether something's on track or not. And I'm thinking in terms of what the public will be seeing when they are thinking when they see this.
We've begun the process, Commissioner. That's what that means. Of course, we have until the end of the year to develop, to implement all of those activities. We've started the process, and the plan is to make sure that that's complete at the end of the year. So when we started this, you might remember, this was mid-year. The goal was to establish a budget to make sure that we had the team in place. Of course, we've made those hires. We've also introduced Lori Latham to the organization. That was a year ago, 2 years ago, actually. All of those actions that we took to increase effective communications and to be transparent, in my estimation, we're on track. It doesn't mean that we are complete with that, but we are on track. The process has begun.
If I could just follow up, what are the other statuses that we could see there other than on track as the year progresses? Or will the public always see on track for anything that is at any level of progress? So basically it's either complete or on track.
So MB is here, but what we're going to do, there will be a report that gets published at the end of the year that will identify, will drill down, and it will provide an update, much like what we were doing at the May board meeting, evening meeting, where we acknowledge excellence in action. So all of these actions that would have occurred will roll up, and that will be displayed also on the website instead of a one-time report. Those will get published inside of that database. That has been one of the key improvements with the performance measurements report, that a lot of that information was held in a separate database. That information will be displayed once those things have been executed at the end of the year.
Chair, I appreciate a little leeway here. It's the first time we've seen this dashboard, and
Sure.
and so I'm really, my assumption was that the purpose of the dashboard was to provide information to the public about our progress on our strategic plan. So I'm assuming it hasn't been published yet, but this is perhaps the first time we've seen it internally.
Yes, it's the first time. It's the first time out the gate, and as you know, with everything that's been happening around COVID-19, I wanted to push staff to say, let's move on and get this out, and begin this process of publishing, of sharing, and we will make sure that this gets fully published, updated, so that all of the actions that have been taken and results that have been had will be clear and seen by the public.
So I just would offer some feedback here that defining for the public in some way what the various status indicators represent. And in this case, perhaps in progress dash on track might be helpful, because to me—
Explain what that means, yes.
Yeah, a little more definition in those, I think, would be helpful. Thanks for your indulgence, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm tempted to suggest the alternative is off track, but that probably isn't going to work either. So yeah, let's go ahead and let Wayman finish this this presentation. I just would ask the commissioners if you put your hands up in the participants icon, then Mary Beth can alert me so I can at least keep track of this a little more effectively. So appreciate it all. Okay, go ahead, Wayman.
Commissioner Hennessy has a question.
Okay, Commissioner Hennessy. Since I allowed Commissioner Talon, I'm going to do this as well, and then let's see if we can go ahead and get this finished.
Well, we're talking on the structure of the administration and the tasks that are being done right now, and this is, you've done a good job of restructuring your administration and putting people in place, and this is still a work in progress. So, but I'm sometimes confused, especially now that we're not meeting in person, as to who's doing what and who you would contact. I'm not completely clear on what the administrative duties are for the various people we have in place and where it will be going in the future.
I think one of the things that you and I have talked about, of course, Commissioner, I did receive your email as of yesterday as well. We will update our org chart for everyone to see where all the folks are seated in the organization, what roles they play. We can do that soon, but of course, we're in the process of now searching for a new deputy administrator, as you know. And of course, Matthew Van Zetten is off on a long-term medical leave, which complicates things. But I can assure you we're manned up in all the areas to conduct the county's business, even with a few hiccups. So we will publish that so that you can see all the different roles and functions where people are seated.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the whole situation right now makes it more difficult to know who's on first, and I appreciate what you're doing to make sure that all the bases are covered and we're changing as the need and the times require of us.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, Wayman, go ahead. I think you meant staffed up, right? Yeah. Okay, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I will continue. These are good questions, though.
Yes, they are.
Yes. We'll move on to the next item, which is to promote a culture of visionary, creative, and strategic thinking. And we will talk about objective, which is to maintain a 4.5 or better on the Board of Commissioners survey. This goes out each year, and we're fortunate that our rating is still meeting goal. We continue to recognize the fact that good is not good enough, and we will continue to push to make sure that our commissioners are getting what they need in terms of the electronic as well as the written communications, follow-up, follow-through, and so forth that needs to be done. But we're feeling pretty good about the feedback we're receiving from our commissioners. Okay, we're going to move to significant accomplishments now. This is kind of a rehearse or a review of what we've accomplished in the past year. And again, these are not all of the accomplishments. You will see, of course, the AAA rating that we talked about. We were very proud to be recognized as one of only a few counties in the country and only a few counties in the state, which includes Oakland and Washtenaw counties. And then, of course, we adopted the strategic plan, worked with our County Board of Commissioners, revised the plan, made sure that all departments, elected, non-elected, were aligned. They created their goals and objectives to align with the strategic plan. I can't thank Mary Van Til enough, and Sandra Gostin-Jones and others who participated, Jennifer Hedrick, others who helped to move us through the process in moving us to Invisio. And of course, Lori Latham and Matthew Van Zetten prior to that, working with the team out of Lansing to create the strategic plan. In indigent defense, the Board of Commissioners approved the contract with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission to implement the plan that covers all of the county's district courts as well as the 17th Circuit Court. We were one of the first to be ready. I thank Craig Paul and Linda Howell for their work in making sure that we were compliant. Craig continues to be the point person for indigent defense in the administrator's office. The infrastructure analysis that was done with the facilities management information technology team, Al Jano and Matthew Van Zetten, and a whole host of others worked to put a visual overview of the county's facilities, infrastructure needs in front of the Board of Commissioners, and a lot of cost data. We utilize Progressive Architectural Engineer as a partner with that. And of course, as you know, we created a future plan for North County campus, parks office, and visitor center, and a fleet maintenance garage, and also plans to move 82 Ionia, move out of 82 Ionia. All of that, as you know, is on hold as a result of the current economic condition due to COVID-19. We've also been very successful advocating with our local state legislators as well as our federal legislators. But I'm really proud that we have the relationships that we have both sides of the aisle. Was invited this past year to attend the governor's State of the State address with Senator Brinks, and of course the relationship with Senator McGregor and others have been very strong, and we were able to accomplish quite a bit working together with them in pursuing the county's issues. We received revenue sharing, of course, and we lobbied for the passage of raise the age legislation. Very proud of what we were able to accomplish there. Ready by 5 millage. We moved forward with a plan. We now have a committee that's been established. 2 commissioners serve on that subcommittee. Commissioners Skaggs and Sparks, along with Sandra Gostin Jones, and we went through the first round of funding this past year, and now we're moving forward into the second year. This has gotten quite a bit of national attention. I was in Washington, D.C. this past February, providing an update at NACO about our efforts. It was well received. We're only a few counties in the country that in fact have programs that were funded by a millage, and very proud of how the community has rallied around that effort. To the next one. State of the county in a public setting at DeVos Place was conducted. Chair Bolter and myself outlined the county's initiatives, and we made sure that this was well attended. There was 100 plus people that attended this event, and the plan was to do it again this year in late April, and then maybe May, but now things have moved, and plans to do this by the end of the year could still happen. Chair Boulder and I will need to talk about that, but the plan is to continue to do that each year. Chair Bolter convened the local units of government to discuss issues of mutual importance. The townships, we met out at one of our beautiful parks, Townsend Park, and she continues to increase her relationship with our 6 central city mayors, and continuing to make sure that we collaborate, meet with them on a regular basis. 911 surcharge. This is something that we have been working on for a number of years. We were able to assess Sprint, one of the larger providers of that service, and we identified $1.4 million in which they failed to collect from phone users in the past 2 years. We were very successful in getting Sprint to agree to pay us, and now the phone bills go up to 70 cents per phone as a result of action. I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Hedrick and Steve Duarte and his team at the time, Fiscal Services, for what they were able to do to get that landed. And then behavioral health, the county's population health consortium, which was established a couple of years ago now, was met with the mental health crisis system task force. Commissioner Stack, who chaired that task force, were asked to engage in the process of bringing the major hospitals into the fold and moving the recommendations forward. We negotiated with them and were successful in hiring Tri-West to work with us in developing a further analysis and assessment of our mental health crisis, mental health system. And the partners agreed, and now we have two components of that, a working group and an executive leadership group that's chaired by myself and Mike Jananoa to move forward with the recommendation. And we're very fortunate that everybody's still at the table, and we're meeting even during COVID crisis to get that project done. A look ahead, the animal shelter, of course, is an important part of the organization. We continue to address some of the issues. There's a work group, a crimes work group that was formed. We are reviewing technology options to assist real-time lost animal pickups and mapping and ways to increase community engagement. And agricultural preservation infrastructure analysis. We hired on staff a part-time individual to serve as the lead person working with Matthew Van Zetten in the office, and to identify how we can move the recommendations forward with regards to dealing with agricultural preservation. Different concepts. We also have a contract with Suzanne Schultz, who formerly worked with the City of Grand Rapids, who's now with Progressive Architectural Engineering, to help us with that plan. And of course, we are planning to update our website, as we talked about earlier. A new communications specialist has been added to assist with that effort, social media and other communications initiatives. If you go to Access Kent today, it is well beyond where it was a year ago in terms of what's there, how it's negotiated. I can't thank Sonda enough for her work, and of course, Lori Latham. Community mental health system, the Tri-West group will continue to engage with the community stakeholders around the mental health crisis services system. We are hoping to be done with that project, at least a recommendation coming forth by the fall. Data analysis, a key part of what we're doing to make sure that we are in the front end of initiatives and leading the way. We've now hired a data scientist in Mike Fortman, and that help has really been tremendous. As you know, we have a huge effort related to behavioral health, as well as the opioid crisis that was occurring. We found that Mike, working alongside Jennifer Hedrick, Mary Beth Van Til, and Cedric Ocean Jones, and others, leveraging the resources around the county has been really instrumental in making sure that we are thoughtful and smart about what we're to do around these key issues. Housing affordability. We were planning to meet in April with the group that the Fry Foundation, the City of Grand Rapids, the Chamber of Grand Rapids, after we had done our initial assessment of housing affordability. We met with the county board, shared that information at our retreat. The plan was to pull together community stakeholders, township supervisors, others who are also engaged, other cities. We had planned to move forward. That has been on hold as a result of COVID. But the plan is to move forward with that as soon as we get an opening to go back and work with that. And then finally, the operations excellence and inclusion effort. This philosophy will operationalize our strategic vision. It is taking diversity and inclusion wholly different direction in terms of how do we apply the idea of operational improvement to the idea of building and growing talent within the organization. How do we mine the talent within the organization to build a better Kent County? And we have had several discussions around that. Of course, the COVID-19 hit. We will get back at that as soon as we get some relief. But HR and our office, Human Resources in our office, are working to deploy that sometime yet this year. We are looking forward to that. I'm really excited to know that we would, in fact, be doing something unique and different compared to what typically is done around this idea of diversity and inclusion. And that's it. I'll take any questions if you have them.
All right. Thank you, Wayman, for that report. I will go back first to a couple of commissioners who raised some questions during the presentation and make sure that they've had their issues resolved or addressed. First, Commissioner Talon, did you have anything else?
Not on the issues that I brought up earlier, just one follow-up perhaps. Curious, Wayman, about the hiring of the deputy administrator, wondering, I know you sent a little bit of information, but wondering if someone could send a little bit more about the process and
Sure.
how people can apply and so on.
Sure will. I'll make sure that happens this week.
And what the time frame is. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Talon. Commissioner Hennessy, did you have anything further that you wanted to address?
No, thank you very much.
Commissioner Ponstein has his hand up.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Steck. So Wayman, you talked about the AAA bond rating, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. How are we setting with the debt that we have out there that is supposed to be paid back through fees, like, the airport relies on parking revenue, flights in and out. The hotel motel tax is supposed to pay the bonds on the convention center. Is there anything that we need to be worried about? Because as I may see one plane in the sky a day, and I don't see any conventions or lots of visitors to our hotels. Is there a bigger thing we should be looking at when it comes to that?
At this time, there is not a need to be concerned. However, that if we continue to go, another 6 months or so, yes, I think we need to be concerned. But been given information by the airport, they have a solid fund balance, if you will. They've made the necessary adjustments in their operation plan. Glad we did not move ahead with the bonding of the projects to complete out there. With regards to the Boss Place, the bonds on that facility, we have significant enough fund balance to carry us. I am concerned about Experience Grand Rapids, the role that they play, of course. We need to make sure that they are at the ready to jumpstart the engine, if you will, to bring these events, conventions back here. We can't wait for that. We've got to make sure that they're ready because they are the folks that bring groups here. But at this point, I'm not concerned. We are well below our legal debt limit, as you know. But to maintain this momentum that we've been enjoying, we really got to be careful about what projects we take on. I'm thankful that we did not take on the capital improvement projects. Those dollars are there. If we wanted to utilize them like we did in 2007, 8, 9. But at this point, I don't see us worrying. And we shared that with the rating agencies. They were very clear about, they were very interested in hearing basically the same questions that you've asked. And I don't think they would have given us the AAA rating if they didn't think we had our act together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vonk, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Just a follow-up to Commissioner Ponstein's question. In auto racing, when they have a big wreck on the speedway, they red flag the race. And as you spoke this morning, Wayman, it sounds like we're just going on down the track and nothing's happened. We just hear the news from Lansing that they're really bleeding, and that concerns me. I was wondering, where is the first place we're going to notice it in the county that we're got some serious problems coming? I know that, as the Commissioner Ponstein mentioned, the hotels and restaurants and whatnot that help fund different parts of the county organization already are suffering. And I wonder what Plan B is. And moving on, you mentioned the airport. As finance chair, we're very concerned at the airport. I have a meeting in an hour with the finance committee, and I know we've got a lot of work to do out there as well. So I just wondered if we got a backup plan to where we are right now in case things are worse than we think.
Yeah, we have taken in consideration the level of revenue that we're receiving or potentially would not be receiving as far as revenue sharing. That would be one of my biggest concerns at this particular time. State revenue sharing right now is still up in the air. There's a question mark on that. Although I've heard that the initial budget recommendations maintain it, in fact, increase it, at least from the House side. And I don't know if that's going to hold. So I'm concerned about revenue sharing. I could see us being impacted by that. I also know that when it comes to staffing, we have to be careful and don't, we can't add people. And so we put a moratorium on the number of people that we're going to bring through the budget process this year. We've met with the sheriff's office, had discussions with them about that, how important it was. They're the largest of our organization. And I think, like you, I'm concerned. However, at this point for 2020, I am not concerned that we will be in a place where we were balanced. But 2021 may be a different story if state can't balance their budget, if in fact we see no conventions being pulled. And as you mentioned, the airport, there are some definite issues related to the number of people that are traveling to the area. So 21 could be a different story in 22. At this point, Commissioner, I'm like you. I remain confident that we have our finances in order, but if we have to make those changes like we've always done, we will make those changes. We will make those serious decisions. And of course, remember last time when we went through this, we cut 115 employees from the organization. That's where our largest costs are. But at this point, as a result of the CARES Act funding and the way that the federal government has supported counties, we're not in a position where we need to worry about cutting our staff at this point.
Okay, thank you, Wayman.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner have a question, comment for Wayman?
See none.
All right, just a comment, Wayman, from me. I have tried to attend as many of these Friday morning community-wide sessions that you have hosted, and I think that those have been well received across the county. I think they've served a very valuable purpose, and I didn't see them specifically mentioned here because I suspect they were implemented first on a short-term basis, but it's a level and a nature of communication out there that I think has been very helpful, has proven to be a very effective way of engaging the full county and all of the various institutions across the county. And as we go forward, our inquiries and anxieties across the county may shift more to the economic issues than the health issues, and would encourage you to continue to look for ways of doing that in a way that engages the community and assures them that we're continuing to work on all these issues.
Hear, hear.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I agree too.
I think there was an acclamation on that. I'll take that.
Yes.
Let's move to the next item of business, which is item 5, the 2020 federal priorities.
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the 2020 federal priorities. Board Chair Mandy Bolter and Board Vice Chair and Chair of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee, Stan Steck, Board Vice Chair, along with the Administrator's Office staff, met with Becky Beckler from Public Affairs Associates and Steve Carey from Potomac Strategies to review the 2019 priorities and discuss priorities for the 2020 legislative session. Based on these conversations and outreach to Jim Talon, Legislative and Human Resources Vice Chair, a proposed list of 2020 federal priorities have been created. They're in your packet.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Commissioner Melton.
All right, thank you. Moved by Commissioner Melton. Is there a support?
Talon supports.
Seconded by Commissioner Talon. Any discussion? I am seeing no hands.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Oh, Commissioner Skaggs has his hands up. Go ahead, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thanks, Chair. I got a couple of questions. I guess I'll take them one at a time if I may. So we're down to 2 federal priorities. As I looked over last year's, it appears that we've taken out the discussion about immigration reform and judicial warrants. We've taken out the priority of an air traffic tower. We've taken out the priority of the CDBG funding. And then we've taken all the ongoing issues, such as lead. So why did the 2 or 3 of you decide to do that?
Well, let me respond to some of those. First of all, I believe the CDBG and airport tower really are no longer active or relevant considerations. And Wayman, you can address that as well. But I think that those issues have already been addressed.
That's correct. The airport, we attempted to provide support, but of course, as you know, the airport also has their own lobbying firm that they work with. We wanted to make sure that we were supportive of that, and of course we continue to be. And of course the CDBG, that's an ongoing issue. We continue to see that as an important item, but it's not something that we are feeling is strongly needing to be advocated for at this particular time.
The other comment I would make in response to Commissioner Skaggs was the priority dealing with environmental issues was drafted in a way that consolidated a couple of these. So the lead issue is inclusive within that. So PFAS, lead, those kinds of environmental concerns were identified in a singular priority instead of the multiple set of priorities.
So I guess I'll just go back to Wayman's answer there, because I guess I wasn't quite following. We don't have funding for an air traffic tower. We're still supportive of it, but we've decided not to make it a priority. Is this?
Well, here's what
I don't understand why we took it out if we think it's a priority for the county. I mean, I understand there's some ownership issues that would go along with it.
Yeah.
Certainly felt a reason to put it in last year, and I
yeah.
don't.
Here's the the way that the airport has owned that situation in terms of their advocacy and the way that they've actually led that effort to put that in front of the legislative priorities is really at this point. It is a side issue. It's not a main issue. I think that's really what we're saying. It is still supported by the county. is supported by the Board of Commissioners, but it is something that the airport and their organization are focused in on. And if they're asking us to involve, of course, we will involve ourselves, but it's not one of these core priorities that we're pushing our lobbyists in Washington, D.C. to follow. So perhaps saying that it's not an important issue is not really what we're saying. It's just that it's not listed as one of the key priorities that we're involving our lobbyists on.
As would be true for many issues that we continue to have interest in and have positions on. But
Okay, I'll try again then. The second question I had is, it would seem to be a federal priority to have something in here about COVID funding. Just a quick Google search at the MAC sites and the NACO sites has all sorts of letters discussing the need to deal with revenue loss and support from the counties. Obviously, the House has passed a bill. There certainly seems to be some movement towards that. But I'm wondering why, especially given what Wayman said about potential problems for the budget, depending on the economy in the next fiscal year, why the two or three of you decided to leave out any mention of the current crisis from these priorities.
I think the current thinking on that is not that those are not important, but they are evolving. And you'll note that the current statements are really not particularly new. They are issues and initiatives that we had endorsed last year and continue to endorse this year. What we need to do in the face of COVID and what kind of issues need to be prioritized in that is an ongoing analysis. I think you'll recall last year as well that merely adopting a set of priorities did not preclude us from continuing to explore whether there are other things that needed our attention, and we did do that last year. Likewise, this year, I would anticipate that as we go forward with the COVID analysis and the response, there could very well be a COVID priority that we articulate and then bring back.
Well, I guess as with many answers from Commissioner Steck, I'm not sure I understand exactly what that means. All processes in politics are evolving and ongoing. If we're not going to include things on the legislative priorities because they're ongoing and evolving, then we're probably not going to include anything. As far as it doesn't need to be on the federal priorities for us to make it a priority, then I guess I'm at a loss as to why we even do this. Who decides later on what the federal priorities are? This whole process, I think, has been a sad display. Reading this, the 7 of the 9 members of this committee were not consulted in any way on these, until we got this agenda on Friday. We used to have work sessions. We used to pass out drafts. Now we just get thrown a truncated version of federal priorities with the most important federal priority we probably had in a generation excluded from the list. I am a hard no on this. This is a bad process and a bad outcome.
Well, Commissioner, to say it's excluded would be an interpretation that you overlay into it. It is not accurate. We have certainly identified COVID-19 and our response to it as being a critical issue that the county will continue to look at and explore. Whether it arises to the level of needing to identify it as an operative federal priority is yet to be determined. I would assume that that's a conversation we'll continue to have, and I highly expect that you'll be an active participant in that conversation as we go forward.
I mean, this is a process that's going on now. There is House legislation being passed in Washington, D.C. Why the delay?
Commissioner, may I respond? I was still responding. The indication of whether or not we need to identify that as a priority is a different question of whether or not we are engaged in the process of proceeding to work effectively and aggressively on these issues. You know that over the course of the years that you've been involved, we don't always identify every issue that we are actively working on at a federal priority or a state priority. In fact, I'm not sure we've even had federal priorities until 2 years ago. So I don't think that would be fair to suggest that merely because an issue has not yet been identified or stated in a federal priority, it is not important to us and we're not continuing to work on it. Again, I identify the fact that last year, in the course of the priorities, over the course of the year, we continued to work on a priority that you were very interested in and ultimately brought it back to the commission for its consideration and ultimately did approve it. So please don't suggest that merely because there's a priority or an issue or something of importance that's not currently stated here, it therefore has no more interest, has no more relevance, and we don't intend to take it up. So that's my explanation, and I understand you want to have them all identified here, and you want to have them stated before we vote on them, on additional ones, and that's fine. But I just want it clear that because we've identified and articulated these two as being the two we wish to identify and prove now, it does not preclude us from continuing to look at others.
Commissioner Bonk has his hand up.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to speak to the tower real quick at the airport. The federal government is not funding as many towers as they have in the past. That's one issue, but Rayathon has come out with a new electronic method, which sort of makes the tower the way of the traffic cop, and they can do more on the ground in a 20 by 20 foot room than they can from the tower, knowing where the planes are, and they can tell levels, and they can do a lot more than they can from the tower. Now, if that would fit Grand Rapids, I'm not sure, but that's the newest and latest and greatest technology that's out there. Will it work with Grand Rapids? I don't know, but it's only pennies on the dollar versus what the tower would cost. So just new stuff. Things are changing all the time, and just want to alert the other commissioners of what's going on as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Melton.
Thank you, Chair Stack. I do have a question as far as, is there a particular reason, and perhaps it's just the circumstances that we're in now, that we did not meet as a group to discuss these, which we have done at least the few years that I have been on the board, and 3 out of the 4 I've been on the LHR committee. We have discussed these. We've had work sessions, which I realize are more difficult now, but that's just my question. Is there a reason why this was not done as a board? It is one of the things that I felt like the LHR committee was invested in and should have a part in.
Well, my response to that, Commissioner, would again begin by saying that this is a process of the board. This is presented to the LHR, which is given the responsibility to go through these. And if there are concerns or issues that would reject these particular statements or priorities, then I would assume that we would go back and then we would either be reviewing or potentially doing a work session. If there are additional priorities, that is that the concern is not that these priorities are problematic, but there are other priorities that we need to continue to look at. I would anticipate that we would operate as we had before by identifying those, percolating those up, discussing them, and if they require a work session, potentially scheduling a work session to follow up on those as well. These two are, again, thought not to be particularly difficult, simply because they had been vetted in the prior process of the Board of Commissioners and are not challenging new statements. They are some refined statement, but they're not particularly new. So I think part of the thinking was that does that require an entire work session if we're not articulating new issues? And the thinking was that it would not. That's not to say that we can't do that. So I hope that at least addresses the thinking at this point.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Skaggs.
Yeah,
Commissioner Skaggs.
I make a motion to table this agenda item for further review and work sessions by this committee.
I agree.
Motion to table is not debatable. Is there a support?
Melton supports.
It is supported. Is my roll call person here?
You want to ask if there are questions on the motion?
Yes, any questions on the motion to table?
There is none.
All right. Go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, on the motion to table, Commissioner Hennessy,
No.
Melton,
Yes.
Onstein,
No.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Talon,
No.
Teal,
No.
Bonk,
No.
Chair Stack.
No.
That's 2 yeses, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 noes. So motion
All right.
fails.
All right, the motion to table was not approved, so we are back to the underlying motion to approve these two statements of federal priorities. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make another motion. I make a
All right.
motion that we add a third priority, that priority be about the COVID response, and that it include the wording from NACO, which we're a member of, and which is something that's being supported by the Michigan Association of Counties that we're a member of. It simply states, as Congress begins negotiations on the next COVID-19 response package, we urge Congress to provide direct, flexible funding to county governments of all sizes who are on front lines of this unprecedented public health emergency and economic crisis. I move that that be added to the federal priorities.
All right, there's a motion to add, I'm assuming that we have that specific enough, but to add a additional federal priority dealing with COVID as articulated by Commissioner Skaggs. Is there support?
Melton supports.
Commissioner Melton supports. Is there discussion on the motion to amend? I see Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chair Stack.
Ponstein, yes.
Thank you, Chair Stack. So I guess I don't really have a problem adding that to this, but just going forward, I mean, the priorities for our legislative lobbyists, I mean, they're ongoing. We can add and subtract all the time going forward in the future. Is that a correct statement?
I believe that is correct, and I cited to the committee what we did last year with respect to one state priority. We did add one.
Skaggs.
Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Ponstein, did that answer your inquiry?
Yes, it did.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Skaggs.
So I think this is a fairly simple addition, something supported by the two county organizations that we belong to. You know, this is a fairly, you know, nonpartisan and non-controversial statement made by NACO here. You know, certainly we can come back to these things. However, this is something that I think is going to happen in the next couple of days or weeks. And so if we want to, I think it is worthwhile to make a specific board charge to our lobbyists that's making up for lost revenue caused by the virus and caused by complying with federal and state orders and laws is a top priority. So I would urge everyone to support this very simple and basic federal priority that's on the current crisis that cannot wait.
Commissioner Hennessy.
Commissioner Hennessy.
Commissioner Skaggs, is there any way in which you can show us what it is you've said so that we can see this in writing and I can visualize better in black and white? I don't have any problem with that. I'm just wondering if maybe a cover letter that goes to our lobbyists with our federal priorities might help to cover some of the broad aspects and those that you're talking about with the COVID-19 response from the federal government as well. There's a little bit of a question there.
All right. I think the question is a question raising.
If there could be a cover letter.
Yeah, which raises an issue about can we effectively, we've moved away from the work session where we totally vet and deliberate these to drafting at the committee meeting level. And I think certainly I would see there's broad support for the initiative. There's broad support for identifying a federal priority dealing with COVID. I think that there is difficult time identifying specifically without fully vetting that through staff and the various components exactly what should that statement of priority look like when written form. Do we simply adopt wholesale what NACO has said or what some other organization says, or do we craft it based upon what we think is necessary and appropriate for Kent County? So I think the question right now before us is a motion to adopt NACO's statement.
You have Commissioner Ponstein has hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Steck. Yeah, I think it needs to be vetted a little bit. I don't want to be too critical of NACO. They do a great job, but I mean, everything that I've seen through them on calls that I'm on, emails I get from them, they're fully behind this CARES Act of $3 trillion. And if you read the, I think, 1,885 pages, there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't have anything to do with COVID. And I've got a problem with that. So, I mean, I support Commissioner Skaggs that, yeah, COVID should be on the radar, you know, laser focused. But so much of the spending really, it just keeps piling up. I think we need to be specific on how this affects our county. And I would hope that maybe we can work this out and then at our next meeting, just add it to our priorities.
All right. Any other commissioners?
Chair, this is Talon.
Yeah, Commissioner Talon.
Commissioner Skaggs put a statement to be added in the group chat, and I am comfortable with that. It doesn't mention NACO, so it doesn't bring in any other kinds of issues, but it's a pretty straight, direct, and I feel like we can find a way to make that fit into the kind of format and structure of our other priorities. That would be my thought. I would tend to be supportive.
Mr. Skaggs has his hand up again.
All right, Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes, I just wanted to call to everyone's attention to the chat. I don't know if everyone has it open, that is the language that I read off. That's the language from the NACO. I think, again, you know, it simply calls to provide direct, flexible funding for county governments of all sizes. I know that in some of the last funding, it only went to the larger counties. So you know, the nuts and bolts and the ugly sausage making that Commissioner Ponstein mentioned are sort of beyond our control on all of these issues. But I think a clear and direct statement that the federal government ought to take some responsibility for what's going on down here at the local level, as we are with our public health departments on the front lines of this crisis. So that's all.
All right, so I'll take that note in the chat room is the articulation and writing what your motion called for. Yeah, I guess I would tend to agree with Commissioner Ponstein. I think that, again, all of us are strong supporters of finding a solid, aggressive statement of policy on how we need to best protect and advance the interests of this county in the COVID response at the federal level. But I am not comfortable simply articulating and moving in the committee for the first time without fully vetting this process and this language through administration and making sure that we've identified language that specifically is supportive. So I would vote against this, but strongly accept a process of taking this back for vetting through administration, through staff, and presenting back if we need a work session later, but bringing it back on a more carefully articulated statement. So again, I'm going to vote against it, but it's not because I don't agree that Commissioner Skaggs raised a very excellent point and that we need to be aggressive in looking at this issue. In the meantime, while I went on, Commissioner Melton raised her hand.
Thank you, Chair Stack. I am going to support this. This is why I asked, is there a reason that we were not all involved in our federal priorities in the first place? I am sorry that this has had to come to a head like this, that we've had to add so quickly. But I too agree that our health department has been working, as we all know, just incredibly well, incredibly strong. And I truly believe that in writing, if for no other reason than just to show support in writing, that we at the federal level want to be considered at our community level, at our county level, as being a priority when they make their decisions. So I totally, completely support this. I do wish that we had had a session beforehand so that we could have talked about all of these things and really worked some of these out. But I think that what Commissioner Skaggs has put on our chat, it makes very good sense to me, and I am very strongly in favor of this.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I am a supporter of process. I also think that process should not get in the way of the ability to change things through our actual legislative process, through our meetings, through the ability to offer amendments. If we always go back to process, I think we can get a bit bogged down. And I think this perhaps is one of those cases where the issue is pretty clear. I think what Commissioner Skaggs has put in writing is pretty clear, and I'd love to see more process, but it does feel urgent to me, and I appreciate that he's taken the time to put that together. I think we ought to go ahead and improve it. Thank you.
Any other commissioner?
No other commissioners, questions? No.
All right.
Well, you got one more, Commissioner Bonk.
Commissioner Bonk, yes. Commissioner Bonk, you may be on mute.
He's unmuted now.
We good?
You're good.
We good?
Good.
Yes, Congress is going to send us a Christmas package they want, and it's one size fits all. As you know, some counties like our own are bigger than some states are big as, and some are just non-pa, like a township. So they're just going to craft one size that fits all, and a lot of the work that we do is one size fits all, and it is what it is. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep over this one.
All right. Anyone else? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Steck. Yeah, overall, I don't have a problem including it, but I still think it needs work to target specific areas that the county may be in need of clarification and maybe more emphasis on some things over others. But we can do that, and we can always change it or clarify that. But I think Commissioner Skaggs has put out something that's short and sweet, gets to the point, and lets people know that, yeah, we're concerned about it. But yeah, I want to make sure that when our lobbyists are talking about COVID-19, they should be well aware of the effects that it's having on us as Kent County and not as the state of Michigan or the United States. So I don't really have a problem with it. I know these are difficult times when we are doing everything over phone and emails, but I think it's fair to include it, but I do think that it needs work on it to clarify it, and maybe that can be worked on with leadership and Commissioner Skaggs to maybe address more specifics, and then include that for our next legislative meeting, or if there's a different timeline that people want to work off. Thank
All
you.
right. Anyone else? I mean, I
No
would.
other questions.
Okay, I mean, I would say that, again, I think that the concept has support. I don't know that, as long as I've been around, that we've ever pushed a legislative priority statement without giving our staff, administration, a full opportunity to vet it and to contribute their thoughts, their insights, their analysis to the process. And not having the opportunity to sit back and do some of that analysis before we bring a statement together, it would be my concern. The other point is, I can't imagine that for the life of me that there would be any change in the intensity with which we and our staff are pursuing whatever recourse is available to us at the state and federal level in the face of the COVID response. So this is certainly not a statement that will now trigger a barrage of activity that we are now going to release our staff to go do. So I still speak in favor of a more thoughtful, vetted process. We can certainly bring this back in a statement, and it may come back in a statement very similar to this, but not to allow this to go forward with a vetting process that we have traditionally used to make sure that when we get a statement of priorities, it has been it's consistent with that process. To me, would be inappropriate. I'm uncomfortable with that. Well, I'm sorry. Is there another hand up? I think Commissioner Melton, did you raise your hand up again?
I did. Thank you, Chair Steck. Okay. And just, I agree, process is very important. I'm sounding like a broken record, but again, having not had the opportunity to be given a chance or a voice in how we have gone forward with this process. I know that these are unusual times. That is not necessarily a criticism as much as it is a statement. And we have not, since certainly I have been alive, ever experienced anything like what we are going through right now with the COVID-19. And so to have nothing on our federal priorities referring to COVID-19, as we know we can change things. We've already talked about that. We can come back and revisit this, but I think that right now it is in fact a period of time where while vetting is important, while process is important, sometimes our situations such as what we are facing now needs to be addressed, and we cannot, I personally cannot feel comfortable supporting federal priorities that do not have any mention of COVID-19 in any way, shape, or form. And yes, we all know that Congress is going to do what Congress is going to do, but at least our voice, ourselves will be in writing. It will be there. They will note it. And if that's the best we can do, then that's the best we can do. But certainly to do nothing makes no sense to me whatsoever. We have been hit so hard in this county, and everyone knows that. So while I agree that our administration deserves, and I respect that they should have had more time, again, because of the situation, time is not something that we've had. And I really believe that to have nothing in writing, nothing to say that we are going forward with letting our federal government know that we at Kent County level really want to be heard is not a good use of our leadership in the county.
Is there anyone else?
No.
All right, if not, the motion is to amend the priority motion to add the language of a additional federal priority as stated in Mr. Commissioner Skaggs' chat comment. Can you go ahead and call it?
Okay, on the motion, Commissioner Hennessy,
Yes.
Melton,
Yes.
Onstein,
Yes.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Talon,
Yes.
Teal,
No.
Vonk, Commissioner Vonk,
No.
Chair Steck.
No.
All right, that's 3 no's, 5 yeses. Motion passes.
All right. Then we are back to the underlying motion, which is the motion to approve the statement of legislative priorities as amended. Any further discussion?
Yes, you have Commissioner Skaggs.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Okay, so I still think that this process here of not consulting 7 members of this committee beforehand put us exactly in this situation that we just went through, which was in many ways completely unnecessary. The vetting by staff could have happened a week, 2, 3 weeks ago, if only members of this committee had actually gotten some input on this before it was put on the agenda. That being said, we've added this COVID piece, which seems obvious to me, and I appreciate the support of the commissioners that voted for the amendment. I'm still not sure we have a great answer on why we took out a few of the things that we took out, but in light of the addition of COVID, I think I can support this now.
All right, any other commissioners?
No.
All right, so I think we are up to voting on the underlying motion.
Okay, to vote on the motion, Commissioner Hennessy,
Yes.
Melton,
Yes.
Onstein,
Yes.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Talon,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Vonk,
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, motion has passed. We have a set of legislative priorities for the time being, and we will continue to follow up. All right, next item is human resources, number 6.
So, Chair Stack, I recommend that we provide you the written update. There's a written update here in your folder. Amy Rolson was prepared to kind of talk through this, get to some of the details. But you have a report in front of you which gives an indication of what our response plan is, how to bring people back to work. And we can answer questions throughout the week. We'll make sure that we're available to answer questions following the meeting.
All right, that sounds like a good plan. A number of us need to move on to another meeting too after this, but any commissioner comments or questions with respect to this report? All right.
Just thank you for sharing it.
You're welcome.
All right.
Questions?
Nothing else? All right,
No.
let's move on to the next item, which is miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous?
Seeing no hands.
No hands. I will just report that, again, Commissioner Skaggs, the addition of the priority will for the COVID certainly is one that we have approved now, and we'll take back and take a look at internally as well, and then move this on to the full board and press it at that point and see where it goes. But I would anticipate that we'll continue to also at the same time be aggressively looking at whether there's anything else we ought to be looking at in COVID as well as anything else. So with
Commissioner
that,
Vaughn has a hand up. Sorry.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been complaining about the work of our commission for the legislative committee since this year started, and we had fewer meetings, and a lot of work isn't being done as it was in the past. And Commissioner Skaggs speaks to that, and I've spoken to it time and time again. And there's a lot going on with our sheriff department now, and I know it's really difficult because of COVID-19, but we shouldn't be dropping the ball just because there's a lot of things going on. And I'm just disappointed. This is sort of legislative committee light rather than the way it's been in the past. And that's all from this lame duck. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your encouragement and prodding. Any other miscellaneous? If not, we are adjourned.